At first glance, Haven looks like yet another open world exploration game, but Haven is not just another open world exploration game. As a matter of fact, that's not even the first thing that comes to mind when I want to talk about Haven. So in this video, we're going to talk about what Haven is, what it's like to play the game, and we're going to talk about how you can decide whether or not you should play Haven at all, if this is the kind of game you'd even be into. But before we get started, my name is Dan, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I like to talk about video games that interest me, and sometimes I'll even talk about games that aren't that well reviewed that I think deserve a second chance. So if you don't want to miss any of that, do yourself a favor and subscribe. And if you'd like to hop between the chapters of this video, then go ahead and check the description. I've lined them all up for you and you can hop around to your heart's content. And that brings us to Haven. What is this game? In Haven, you play as a couple that's escaping their society, which just happens to matchmake people based on criteria. Marriages are arranged in their society, but instead of that, these two fell in love with each other in spite of not being matched at all. And this, of course, speaks a lot to their dynamic. They're very quirky and different, but they're also in love, and it's very believable. And the story is told from their experience. Everything they go through together, and you play as both of them. You don't play as just one of them. You don't choose a character. You can switch between one another, but you don't actually focus on one character's story. You're playing as the two of them together. So without getting too far into the story, let's just talk about what it's like to play Haven. What's it like to play this game? And the answer to that is pretty simple. You explore areas, you collect resources, and you complete missions. Within these missions, you're going to find resources, and you need those to make food that you can then use to heal in between missions. And while we're talking about exploring, we have to talk about what it's like to move around in Haven, what it's like to move around between these islands. The characters spend most of their time gliding around. They don't walk. Walking is very slow, and it's actually, from what I'm understanding, pretty archaic in their culture. So rather than running everywhere, you're going to be gliding. You're going to be floating on the floor, collecting flow, which is like this light source that you travel on a trail, and it's fun. It feels nice to glide. And while you're exploring these islands, you're going to come across animals that will fight you because they're diseased, and that's part of the story. I don't want to ruin it for you, but these animals aren't tame and they need to be tamed, and of course you'll fight them, but you end the battle by pacifying them. So you're not actually killing these animals, you're calming them down and then you're pacifying them. But one thing that's really cool about the combat is that you're playing as both characters, so you choose what they do with each side of your controller. So in order for your attacks to do the most damage or your techniques to have the most effect in combat, you have to time the two characters together. You have to sync up what they do, make them do the same things at the same times, and you'll have a better result. This game does a really good job of telling its story about togetherness and love by means of telling you to do things together and make sure that you're using the unit of the two of them as one. And since we're already talking about the story, it's worth noting that Haven is a very story-heavy game. So while you'll feel like some of the game is an open world exploration game, a lot of the game is spent watching the two characters talk, interacting, answering questions for each of them as each of them. The entire game is based around these two characters and their story. So it's not just an action game, it's also a visual novel. And while I did find it to be a bit jarring to go from open world exploration gameplay to visual novel gameplay, which is really just having a conversation, I did find it to be a good balance of the two. And it was fun to watch the dynamic of the two characters play out and see how their love story really works. They argue, they kiss, they get gross, they eat together, they cook together, they go on errands together. This is a couple. It's a real life couple doing real life couple things. That being said, they also know how to glide indefinitely and they can fly a spaceship. So while they do things that are not very human, they also do things that are extremely human. So ultimately, how do you decide if you want to play Haven? And I think that's a really easy question to answer. You just have to ask yourself if you're ready for a story-heavy game. As a matter of fact, when the game gets started, it discourages you from playing on a harder difficulty than normal or easy. And that right there sends the message that Haven is a story-focused game. The gameplay just gets you between A and B. It gets you between story beats. So if you're in the mood for something like that, if you want to kick back, relax, maybe enjoy this with a friend or a partner, then that's the kind of game Haven is. It is not your next Souls-like experience. It's not even your next Breath of the Wild experience. And if you wind up playing this game, do me a favor and let me know in the comments why you played it. Did you play it for the story, or did you play it for the action? I hope you enjoy Haven if you play it, and if you don't play it, I am happy that you were able to decide for yourself that it wasn't the game for you. Thank you very much for watching, and you might have noticed the den, which is this room. It's in a bit of a state of disarray right now. Everything's off the wall. We're doing a little bit of denovation, and it's a renovation with the word den in it. Things are gonna be a little different here. I might have a new angle to work with from the computer. Things might look a little better. Still working on all of it, but I just wanted to, point that out. I do know it's a bit of a mess around me right now, but it's gonna be different. Maybe not in the next video, but the one after that. So pardon my dust.